Good morning, this is Pigsy, doing another video. Basically, it's about the Brexit. Now, if you look at the way the words Brexit, it's, exit. And as for a referendum, it kind of suggests what the choice is for leaving. But I think that whatever choice people made, it wouldn't have mattered. It would have led to them leaving anyway, because I think some of these things are rigged. Giving the people the idea they have independence is sort of maintaining the system of control. The more elite upper bodies aren't going to be affected, particularly by it. I think if it was a last minute decision to roll with it, then there may have been some shock. The fact that delaying all the whole process means there's just a transition. Nothing's really changed. Some of the politics may have changed. It could be originally that the plan wasn't working, that you flood into the country of ISIS and that people would rally their cause and go off and do random terrorist attacks and say, yes, I did it because I'm a part of ISIS. It didn't really work. I think it's basically you light the flame and then to hope the fire catches, and then that was the idea. It just sort of a situation would sort of condescend from that. It hasn't. There is some conflict in Europe. I mean, there's some stuff I've seen to do with France and immigration issues and asylum issues. I think the main issue with asylum, the biggest problem they've really got, is that there's no kind of, not necessarily a vetting process, but you need to sort of hit certain standards. If you've got nothing, why would you travel with nothing to somewhere else and expect there to be something? There's no guarantees. So you need a sort of process of guaranteeing that you've got a job, somewhere to stay, a network of people when you get there. And I don't mean ISIS, I mean something local, so you can integrate. That's the main key thing. But what all I'm seeing and on the news is men and sort of young men just basically causing random acts of violence. They don't fit in. They know they don't fit in. They have no way of. They have limitations of communication. They're looking for handouts. They're sort of quite restless and jealous. I don't think it's because they're traumatised necessarily by war. I think they've been pushed out of the country. Historically, they probably got issues with the West, and I don't blame them, because if they've been bombed and then they're being told they're being bombed by particular things, and it's the Americans or it's the British doing it. But the thing is, at the ground level, with citizens, they're unaware of half the stuff that goes on, military operations. They're only told what the media wants them to know. There's a lot more obviously out there. So I think people shouldn't get themselves too cut up. It might also be a bit of a psyop that how do people respond when you pull the plug on something? Can you tell people that it's the end of the world, and how do they react, and things like that. So, and the other thing with social media and things like Facebook is that people's responses will indicate sort of if they're pro or against, pro-establishment, against establishment. So this kind of collects. It's like a data exercise in that sense. That based on your responses, a response to a crisis and other situations, that they'll be logged against the person. I think that some people would be removed from the system, professionals, based on their patterns of behaviour and things like that. So that's one of the sad realities of using AI technology and algorithms and things like that, because basically it's a way to dataize what would be considered natural chaos, what we are. I recently saw something on David Icke, and I think he said it was a bit of a madhouse, and in essence it is, to a degree. The world we live in is set on different platforms and systems. So you got your natural world that finds its own equilibrium. There's not really good or evil. I think there's a kind of, it's gaining from these experiences of making moral and ethical choices. You can only go so far in one direction, and then you might have to alter your course, basically. I couldn't live my life not eating any kind of, I could not eat meat, but you'd have to cause some kind of damage somewhere along the line. You have to eat something, and then if you've got no food, you would be in a situation, well, do I starve myself or do I eat something? And then and by that act I'd have to kill something that may perceive immoral in order to save myself. So it's kind of this weird equilibrium balance of self and selfless interests, creative interests. So you kind of want to do right, but try to find this balance. And some of the meaning of the life, I think, is just kind of each level, or so each spin of the wheel, basically. So this is one life. The next will be something completely different, and the experience at the end of it is kind of like you know, you get your points scored at the end of it, how effective he was. So slipping into different subjects, because there's no point I won't stay on Brexit, obviously we've just touched upon it. Synchronicity, it's really interesting that people, you know how they say people, you could sort of catch you yawning and it's kind of affected them. Is that a kind of glitch in the program, or is that because we have this kind of network shared consciousness and you may not be so divided as you think as an individual? I mean, with this body, I'm like the program, but the actual the source code is what coming across is like your spirit in essence, and this essence networks further up into this server that you could consider your creator. It could be one of many creators a part of this program. So so that's why it's very different in essence. Even the construct of the idea of Satan is just a program in the systems. Like let's throw this spanner in there, make it more interesting. You know, like you need a bad guy in the game. Otherwise, the game doesn't really change, and well, most people's lives don't change. It's the same pattern. So it's finding this conflict, and then finding a way to manage it and to gaining from it. So it's basically always trying to win, but not giving into it. I mean, a lot of people have got themselves so heavily indoctrinated and programmed into the system that they can't divide themselves from it. You know, it's like everything is, they're basically concentrating like a binary lifestyle. You've got to make choices of yes, no, in, out, leave, stay. You know, nobody stops and thinks, well, actually, maybe the middle choice exists. I mean, well, there are a lot of people. It's just trying to create this systematic behaviour that falls into these algorithms of predictability and limits your outcome. But it could be game over if you fall into this trap of not being an individual. That might be the bad guy, the internal conflict, giving up. You lose your own self autonomy and kind of a sovereignty, really, of existence. So that's one key area I want to touch upon. The other thing I want to mention about is that I sort of come across, it's very interesting, there's a lot of stuff going on, I think, universally. I did notice, I was over a client's house and there was a situation and I was dealing with it, but I noticed at about 10:30 it was still blue skies out there. It's very dark, but it should have been starry skies, but it's 10:30 and I'm thinking this hasn't changed at all. So I thought it was very bizarre, and it kind of had this red, it's almost like a red dawn that you get from what I've seen in Australia, where it's very kind of red, very flat, but I don't live in a very flat area. So I mean, that's another sort of area, is what is the world? Is it flat, it's round, it's empty? You know, it's a big puzzle. I think dimensionally it can be quite a lot of different things, but within this set remit of reality or rules, you've got to comply. I mean, all your people are noticing, they're picking up on these glitches, and then they're kind of saying, well, hang on, if there's this glitch that exists, like everything appears flat, the horizon goes so far, because I think past that, within your bubble, outside of that, it's kind of a projection of what you want the reality to be perceived. It's like the program. If I looked so far in it and I actually could see there was nothing there beyond there, then I'd question the program. It's a bit like hacking dreams. If you've ever been in a dream, you become quite consciously aware, and it may be because you're lifting through different levels of consciousness, but it's actually being able to control a dream. And at levels I do it when I basically awake in sleep state, is that you're still kind of plugged into this dream cycle. So you can sort of go back in your dreams, maybe alter the ending slightly, or interact in some way, or just kind of go off in this like meditative, hypnotic state, and then trance state, and then to sort of explore that. Often, sometimes I've come across different entities within this thing, because they don't. There's no reason for them to exist. It wasn't like I was thinking about some type of grey alien or a reptilian or something else. There was something else from another dimension that was picking up on. It looked like it was pixelated, almost like it had to push through from a higher dimension into this dimension. I need to interact with it, but it's very different. Put it that way. It's almost in this crystal type dimension of things. So it's a very high frequency energy. So I think maybe it's got almost like a protective barrier around it. God knows what would happen if it didn't have that, and it went to our dimension. There's other things about information seems downloaded into the consciousness. There's some stuff I'm not thinking about, it's just there and I seem to know it. A bit like stuff that people go on about these reptilians. It didn't all start with them. It's the Draconis empire that spread out, and then it kind of indoctrinated different races. They've added some of their own genetic markers. I think humans are not actually. I mean, you've got some that have got that particular marker, or different factions, different levels within their society. But there's actually wars between reptilians and the Draconis, and then there was like areas of peace they resolved, and then there was a part where they actually sort of put their ambassadors into their worlds. So you've got like your council of people trying to maintain peace. So it's kind of this pendulum between war and peace. And it's like there's just like two wars. One's the aggressive, offensive, physical, while the other one's more the psychological. Even, like a group of people sitting around, politicians making decisions. That's kind of a warfare of sorts. So it's basically cascaded down. There's talk about the human race being multiple beings, I think, because at one point there was a massive wipeout on this planet, and certain be called gene harvesters. You've got harvester races. They turn up on worlds and they're collecting different samples of humans as well, and they're putting them into their own genetic banks. Now, if suddenly something happened, like I don't know, cataclysmic event, whereby there was a massive solar blast and it just took out the planet, to restore life, they'd bring back what they already had, but they may have modified it. You've also got different races of humans, so there's different to do with what they call star gods, and these are basically highborn beings from different planets that have moved across into basically they populate this planet in a sort of terraforming. So they've done that since the planet basically had developed. Once it got to develop, it's like a consciousness. It's like Star Wars. They're sensing the Force. So there was a new world born, and then quickly beings sought to sort of explore this world, and things that developed on this world they sort of harvested, but they also introduced things. So there we got this sort of complex bioweb of different beings and creatures from different planets. That represent themselves as well. So you've got things like you've got the Black Widow spider. And that's really interesting. I think I saw something where someone tried to set up a Black Widow against the Para-Mentis. They wouldn't fight each other. I think once the Mantis realised it was a Black Widow, it left it alone. So it's kind of interesting that there was a kind of warning on its back. It picked up on it, and it had a respect for each other. So there's something more complicated in there. Now, going back to why you would want to seed something of your own self into a being or a race, is that it gives you a kind of a point of leverage, as well as consciousness awareness. You won't have the Draconis walking around the streets. The atmosphere on Earth is poisonous to most beings. Basically, it's to do with this high oxygen and our iron blood that other races don't have. They have sort of different, like copper, some nickel form of blood as well, and so there's different blood types and different ways they can process it. So a race wouldn't come here if it became sick, because you would just conquer it quite easily. There's no resistance from them. You know, if they come, it's a bit like the War of the Worlds. They turned up, you know, that sort of thing. They didn't really think about the viruses and things like that, and actually there was something, a bacteria or something that's attacked them and killed them off. So it kind of that. See, all these things in films, they've actually got inner meanings there. The reflections of things that have occurred elsewhere in the universe, and also the warnings of what could happen as well. So it's all a part of this matrix reality, holographic, which is closer to what reality is, with regards to what perception is. That can vary between individuals, and I think we touched upon that people may perceive the world differently. There's a lot of empty space because basically the outside of matter, you've got a type of frequency that gives it a form, but within internally it's just energy itself. So it's not limited to taking on a particular form or limited into what the space is. So yeah, there's lots of interesting stuff that's going on, lots of downloads of different information. I think there was something to do with flying saucers that was picking up. Basically, there was something projecting an energy that would change the air around it, so that it became more of a physical material, so it was able to glide through it, almost like gliding through water. I think that's to do that with some sort of harmonics. So you could just change the air around you, so it actually has a physical density. So it's almost like you're driving up it. So there's all sorts of interesting stuff out there. So I've touched on a few subjects. I don't go too random. I just wanted to throw some thoughts out there because I think it's important that I share whatever comes to mind, because it may touch upon other people's own beliefs or knowledge, which will further their education in this universe and their experience. So thanks for listening to me, and speak to you soon.